What's up, psychedelic investors? I'm James, and welcome to our community. In this episode, we'll be covering MindMed's possible uplisting to the NASDAQ. But first, if you enjoy this episode, invest in this channel with your like and subscribe. You will see a return on your investment as we continue to bring you quality content on the psychedelic medicines market. And make sure you stick around until the end of this video. We'll be giving you an update on this channel and what we will be doing in the next few weeks. So in this video, we're going to do three things. First, we'll briefly talk about the requirements to be added to the NASDAQ and whether we think MindMed meets the criteria. Second, we'll discuss what will happen to the stock if MindMed gets accepted and what will happen if it doesn't. Finally, we will talk to you about what this means for you. Is the NASDAQ uplisting even that important? So we're going to start with the requirements for getting accepted into the NASDAQ. First and foremost, it is important to note that the ultimate decision, regardless of how many requirements are met, will be made by a committee. If a company falls short on a requirement here or there, but the committee feels that they are still deserving, they can still be added. Conversely, even if a company technically meets all the requirements, the committee can still reject them if they feel it doesn't fit. So, looking at the requirements, we see that a company must meet all the general requirements and then some specific to the market tier they are applying to. And MindMed would fall into the first category here, the NASDAQ capital market. So looking at the general requirements for NASDAQ, MindMed must meet the criterion for corporate governance, including publicly available shareholder reports, a majority of independent directors on the board, an independent audit committee, an independent committee for the compensation of executives, and a uniform code of conduct for all officers and employees. So MindMed would definitely pass on all of these. They produce the proper reports and have the proper board structure. I'm actually not 100% sure on the last point here, but I would be shocked if they didn't. The company wouldn't be applying if they didn't meet all the base structural requirements. For this next point, meeting NASDAQ's conditions for shareholder approval of security insurances, again, I am sure that it is not an issue. And on the final point, they by far outpace the requirements. Their average volume is around 4 million a day, and they have a market cap north of $500 million. So, getting into the specifics of what MindMed needs to do for the NASDAQ capital markets, it needs to have at least 1 million unrestricted publicly held shares with at least 300 unrestricted round lot shareholders. The bid price for these shares must be $4 or, under certain circumstances, have a closing price of between $2 and $3. On the first point, it blows it out of the water. It has tens of millions of shares. On the second point, it does meet the in certain circumstances requirement of having a share price between $2 and $3, though this is only the case as of early December. So on the chance that they don't get accepted, I would hazard a guess that this would be the reason why. Furthermore, they need to meet at least one of the following three standards: the equity standard, the market value standard, or the net income standard. So right off the bat, I can tell you they don't meet the net income standard. They don't have a net income of $750,000. They're not selling anything yet. They don't have any income. However, they definitely meet the market value standard, and they definitely meet the equity standard. So, in sum, it does look very likely that MindMed's application will be accepted, though of course, this is not certain. And one more thing to note, recently the NASDAQ filed with the SEC to add another requirement for firms wanting to be added to the NASDAQ, though it is not in effect yet. They want to require that a joining company have sufficient diversity on its board, meaning that they have women and minorities. So while MindMed definitely has lots of women, I don't want to play the guess this person's race or sexual identity game, but I'm sure it won't be a problem. Furthermore, I doubt whether this condition would even apply to MindMed, since they applied to the NASDAQ before the NASDAQ even suggested this idea, and it is not in effect yet. And even if it does, MindMed will be fine. So, what will happen to the stock if they get accepted, or if they fail to do so? So starting with the latter, it is obvious that the stock will fall, perhaps substantially. I want to remind you that them getting into the NASDAQ is not a sure thing, and though I believe they will be successful, nothing is certain. Much of this crazy run-up that we have been seeing in recent days and weeks is speculation that they will be accepted, and thus, if they fail to do so, the market will pull back. Conversely, if they are accepted, expect another big spike, as big institutional investors like banks and retail investors on platforms like Robinhood gain access to investing in them. Now, I don't want to speculate on how much the stock could shoot up or pop in either scenario, but my gut feeling is that either way, it will be substantial. So, what does this mean for you, the retail investor? Well, in one sense, it shouldn't really matter to us whether or not MindMed gets accepted under the NASDAQ in December 2020 or in December 22. If you are a serious investor in MindMed, you know that this is a long-term investment based on their technology, not on day-to-day stock movement, even massive ones. If in 5 years MindMed is treating addiction, anxiety, ADHD, depression, and who knows what else, it won't matter whether they got accepted onto the NASDAQ in this month or at a later date. Either way, in 5 years, the stock will be mad high. So, in some senses, I am even selfishly hoping that they are not successful this time around so I can load up on more stocks at a cheaper price. But what I'm trying to say to you guys is that you have to stay laser focused on the fundamentals, the things that matter. So this means their clinical trials and the financial viability of the company. The NASDAQ is not a fundamental. It shouldn't even play into your calculations of whether or not to invest in MindMed. Now, having said that, MindMed getting uplisted to the NASDAQ does have a few very important effects for the company. Primarily, if they are successful, this will mean their stock price will shoot up. And that will mean that when it comes time to get more funding, and that time will come, MindMed will be able to get more money for less dilution. And that is good for both the company and its shareholders. It will ensure the company can continue to be financially viable and fund all the necessary trials. Once the trials are complete, they can use their high market cap to fund production scaling. So in sum, MindMed being accepted under the NASDAQ will have great financial benefits for both the company and its shareholders. But it doesn't change the calculus of whether or not MindMed is a game-changing company that you should invest in. Either way, accepted or not, I am holding all of my shares. So enjoy the roller coaster. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it educational. If you did, feed the almighty YouTube algorithm with your like and subscribe and smash that notifications bell. It'll help ensure that we continue making this content. And on the topic of content, I will be taking off the next 3 weeks for Christmas. But don't worry, I am filming 3 videos today that will be released once a week while I am gone. Although this does mean that if any big announcements happen in that time period, like, I don't know, the NASDAQ uplisting, we won't be able to cover it until I return, so just keep that in mind. And yes, we will come back with a vengeance in January. So that's all for today, folks. This is James from The Psychedelic Investor, signing out. I'll see you next time.